The dream of Florida real estate, once defined by perpetual sunshine and exponential appreciation, is violently collapsing into a widespread financial nightmare. Across the Sunshine State, cities that were recently booming with insatiable buyer demand are now paralyzed, facing the devastating convergence of soaring inventory, collapsing effective demand, and crippling insurance costs that, in a staggering reversal, now frequently make monthly mortgage payments look trivial by comparison. This is not the gentle cooling of a hot market. This is a rapid structural unwinding. The warning signs, ignored by too many, are now flashing bright red across neighborhoods from coastal escapes to family-friendly suburbs. These indicators skyrocketing days on market dom, massive price cuts, surging foreclosure filings, and the insidious onset of a negative equity crisis are eerily reminiscent of the toxic conditions that preceded the 2008 crash. Only this time, the shock is compounded by climate risk and regulatory failure, threatening to hit much harder, which Florida cities are actively watching their hard-earned property values vanish. Where are homes sitting unsold for months, leaving rows of new construction empty and quiet? In this definitive 5,500-word manifesto, we are diving deep into the 10 Florida cities that are quietly, inexorably, turning into real estate ghost towns amidst the unfolding 2025 housing crisis. This analysis will meticulously dissect the specific financial wounds, the price plunge percentages, the collapse of pending sales, the investor sell-offs, and the critical failure of affordability caused by insurance premiums reaching $10,000 annually that make these markets the most vulnerable in the state. We expose the structural failures that have transformed Florida from a financial paradise into a widespread cautionary tale of over-leveraging, overbuilding, and external cost compression. The Southwest Florida coast, which experienced some of the most frantic pandemic-era growth driven by retirees and remote workers seeking coastal living, is now facing the most severe correction. The combination of post-hurricane insurance trauma and massive inventory glut from aggressive overbuilding has created a perfect storm of forced sales and rapidly declining equity. 1. Cape Coral, the golden child's fizzle. Cape Coral was the undisputed golden child of Florida's housing boom, surging to a median price of $424,767 in 2022. By 2025, that boom has fizzled out hard, with the median price dropping to $361,761. This is a steep $63,000 slide, or nearly 15% down, with many specific neighborhoods experiencing even more profound dips. The core issue is a widespread investor sell-off. Many who bought at the peak are aggressively rushing to dump their properties before values fall further. Over 25% of listings are now owned by investors or flippers trying to bail out, creating a massive domino effect where their price slashing forces everyone else to follow suit. Adding to the supply crisis is exploding housing inventory, which has nearly doubled in just 12 months, especially in newer developments where builders severely overestimated sustained demand. The most catastrophic factor is the soaring insurance premium crisis following Hurricane Ian. Some Cape Coral homeowners are now paying $6,000 to $10,000 annually just for insurance, an amount that functions as a debilitating second mortgage, pushing the true cost of homeownership far out of reach for many. Pending sales are failing at record rates, and builders are quietly halting or canceling projects midway, clearly signaling a nervous market where construction halts and piled-up listings confirm the market's severe contraction. 2. Northport, the supply glut and equity wipeout. Northport was the poster child of Florida's pandemic migration boom. In 2022, home prices soared to a jaw-dropping $379,000 to $150,000. By 2025, those same homes are selling for $321,000 to $124,000. This $58,000 drop, or about 15.3% less, is evidence of a deep, structural trend reversal. A critical issue is the massive supply glut in new neighborhoods, where aggressive overbuilding has completely outpaced buyer interest. Entire subdivisions are sitting empty, with for sale signs gathering dust. This oversupply is directly causing falling prices and triggering widespread seller panic. Financing is becoming a nightmare, with lenders tightening standards and demanding stricter terms, leaving more buyers on the sidelines. Consequently, the collapse of pending sales is alarming. Over 30% of pending deals in Northport collapsed last quarter alone, a monumental sign of a shaky, failing market. Furthermore, foreclosure filings have spiked by over 60% year over year. Homeowners who bought at the peak are struggling with peak payments combined with rising insurance and HOA fees. With so many homes sitting idle, the average days on market has nearly tripled since 2022, now exceeding 90 days. Northport is quickly transforming from a boom town into a significant housing bust story. 3. Port Charlotte, the negative equity crisis. Port Charlotte was once a desirable, affordable gem, but in 2025, the market is defined by rapidly declining value and crippling financial stress. The median home price, which hit $333,000 to $142 in 2022, has dropped sharply to $285,719. This 14.2% plunge has wiped out equity for thousands of homeowners. The market here is suffering from skyrocketing days on market, with homes lingering for 90-plus days. The equity wipeout is particularly painful. People who bought during the pandemic boom are now deeply underwater, sparking the early signs of a negative equity crisis where owners owe more than their home is worth. The scenario often forces desperate sales or foreclosures. The supply glut is acute in newer neighborhoods where builders, having rushed in, are now seeing rows of nearly new homes sit empty, with some mid-construction projects canceled due to collapsed financing. The final, fatal blow is the insane spike in homeowners' insurance. Some locals are paying $7,000 to $9,000 a year, a massive cost that forces working families and retirees to pack up and leave, fueling a slow but real population decline and confirming Port Charlotte as a ghost town in the making. Central Florida's suburbs, which benefited from both Orlando's growth and the general affordability narrative, are now facing the destructive consequences of declining population, collapsing investor demand, and the realization that their supposed affordability is being devoured by external costs. 4. Winter Haven, Ground Zero's chain reaction. Winter Haven, once a quiet, cozy favorite for affordable lakeside living, is now ground zero for the state's most acute housing slowdown, flashing multiple crash indicators simultaneously. The average home price of $300,000 to $105 in 2022 has fallen to $275,513, an 8.2% decline. The foundation of the market is visibly shaking. The most devastating factor is the insurance crisis. Some homeowners are paying $600 to $800 monthly for insurance alone, often exceeding their combined principal and interest mortgage payments. This makes ownership financially illogical. The city saw a net outflow of residents in 2024 for the first time in decades. A population slowdown confirming people are moving out due to unaffordable living costs and insurance nightmares, turning once busy neighborhoods eerily quiet. The supply glut in new developments is massive. Builders went wild in 2021 to 2022, and now many homes in these shiny new subdivisions are sitting vacant. Builders are desperate, offering $20,000 discounts, free upgrades, and cash incentives just to move inventory. Financing deals are crumbling, and special assessments for storm damage repairs are hitting homeowners hard. Some properties are being listed below 2020 prices just to attract offers, confirming a chain reaction of warning signs. 5. Deltona, the population and demand collapse. Deltona, a quiet suburb meant to be affordable, is flashing serious warning signs due to population decline and collapsing demand. The average home price of $340,178 in 2022 has plunged to $298,655, a sharp $41,500 loss, or roughly 12.2% down. The very families that once filled up these neighborhoods are now leaving, primarily because the rising costs of staying no longer make financial sense. Insurance premiums are ballooning past $6,000 a year, plus whole fees are jumping by 40% or more. This population decline directly shrinks demand, causing a massive market stall. Homes that once had multiple offers are now sitting with 0 showings for weeks, with average days on market doubling from 30 days to over 75 days. The investor sell-off is acute here, flooding the market with listings and creating a vicious loop. More inventory, fewer buyers, more price cuts. Furthermore, pending sales are failing dramatically, with 1 in 4 deals collapsing in Q1 2025. Financing issues, low appraisals, and buyer nerves are all playing a part in making Deltona Central Florida's most unexpected real estate cautionary tale. 6. Palm Bay, the investor exit and rent-own imbalance. Palm Bay, once an under-the-radar city for budget-conscious buyers, is now defined by hidden rot beneath the surface of a seemingly modest price dip. While prices only slid by $15,000, the underlying metrics are deeply troubling. The most corrosive factor is the urban owner exit. A massive wave of investors bought here for short-term rental profits. Now, new regulations and an oversaturated market have caused a major pullback, resulting in a flood of investor listings that is aggressively pushing home prices lower. Palm Bay is severely hammered by a price-to-rent ratio imbalance. Renters pay around $1,700 a month, while owning a home costs significantly more, especially with 7% to 8% mortgage rates. When renting is drastically cheaper than owning, buyer demand tanks, which is precisely the situation now. Financing issues are critical, as many working-class families simply cannot qualify under the new strict lending standards, causing properties to sit for 85+ days. Unlike booming cities, Palm Bay rents have plateaued or even seen landlords slash prices just to fill units, signaling a rapidly cooling rental market and further weakening investor confidence. 7. Ocala, rural charm meets financial failure. Ocala, the supposed rural escape defined by equestrian farms and affordable homes, is hitting serious potholes. The median home price of $280,010 in 2022 has dropped to $255,510, nearly 9% off the peak. The biggest issue is the soaring insurance premiums. Homeowners in Marion County are seeing policy costs double or even triple, with typical premiums now topping $5,500 to $6,000, especially for older homes. This expense pushes total monthly housing costs beyond affordability for many. Ocala is also dealing with canceled construction projects, a deadly market indicator. Builders have paused multiple new home communities midway through development, citing buyer pullback and higher costs. The skyrocketing days on market, now 80 days, is compounding the problem. Sellers are anxious, cutting prices and throwing in incentives. The final red flag is declining property tax assessments. Local tax rolls are being adjusted downward because appraisers formally acknowledge that home values are sliding, meaning the local government itself recognizes the retreat. Ocala's rural charm is intact, but its financial foundation is buckling. Even the major metropolitan areas like Tampa are not immune to the market collapse. Their sheer scale and growth during the boom meant they relied heavily on fast-moving cash and investor confidence. That confidence is now gone, leaving behind massive inventory and a crisis of buyer financing. 8. Tampa, the rock star's inventory shock. Tampa, once the rock star of Florida's real estate scene, is now experiencing a profound correction. The average home price of $383,410 in 2022 has dipped to $360,013, a slide of over $23,000. While the percentage drop is lower, the implications for a high-growth metro are severe. The strongest red flag is exploding housing inventory. The number of active listings in Tampa has jumped by more than 55% since last year alone. Homes that once sold in under 2 weeks are now sitting for 75 to 90 days, with price cuts of $10, $0 to $20,000 becoming the norm. The crisis of buyer financing is acute, with mortgage rates hovering around 7.5%. Many first-time buyers are priced out or rejected outright. Pending sales plummeted 28% in Q1 2025, a scary stat for a city that relied heavily on fast closings and investor activity. The investor sell-off is undeniable, especially in former short-term rental zones. Urban hosts are bailing, long-term landlords are struggling to break even, and vacant properties are piling up. Tampa is not just cooling, it's starting to crack, confirming its place as one of the biggest housing correction stories in Florida. 9. Port St. Lucie, the collapsing demand engine. Port St. Lucie, one of Florida's appealing family-friendly cities, is seeing its high prices slide back down from $40,510 in 2022 to $375,513, a 7% drop. The surface numbers are misleading. The market is stalling fast due to collapsing buyer demand. Interest from out-of-state buyers, which fueled the pandemic boom, has entirely dried up. The once red-hot bidding wars are a thing of the past, replaced by desperate sellers offering concessions and price cuts just to get a showing. The pending sales collapse is immense. Nearly 1 in 3 pending sales fell through last year due to financing problems, low appraisals, or buyer cold feet. Furthermore, surging HOA fees, often jumping from $80 to $200 plus a month to cover insurance and storm-related upgrades, are hitting residents hard. Days on market has increased from 24 days to over 65 days. The demand engine that once drove growth here is stalling, signaling the start of a much steeper slide. 10. Poinciana, the cost-benefit failure. Poinciana, an affordable suburban haven, is skidding hard. The median home price of $322,450 in 2022 is down to $290,655, a sharp 9.7% decline. The biggest red flag here is insurance costs exceeding mortgage payments. Some homeowners are paying $500 to $800 a month in property insurance alone. When the insurance bill is higher than the actual mortgage payment, people walk away. This cost crisis is creating a rental market weakness domino effect. Rents haven't kept up with costs, and landlords are offering deals to fill creeping vacancies. Poinciana is also facing declining property tax assessments, a rare and telling sign that local governments recognize the shrinking home values. Massive special assessments for storm damage repairs are hitting homeowners like a truck. Poinciana's affordability, its greatest strength, has been completely destroyed by the rising costs of owning. The market collapse across these 10 cities is not a cyclical event. It is a structural failure driven by a toxic combination of external climate risk and financial indiscipline. Understanding these drivers is critical. A. The insurance cost implosion, the true affordability killer. The singular factor distinguishing Florida's 2025 crisis from the 2008 crash is the devastating rise of homeowners' insurance and climate-related costs. Insurance premiums surging to $7,000, $9,000, or even $10,000 annually fundamentally destroys affordability, regardless of the home price. When the cost of mandatory insurance exceeds the principal and interest payment, as seen in Winter Haven and Poinciana, homeownership becomes financially irrational. This external cost is non-negotiable and non-cyclical. It is a permanent risk premium that has priced a massive segment of the population out of the market entirely, driving mass outmigration and foreclosure spikes. B. The overbuilding and supply glut trap. The aggressive, unregulated overbuilding during the 2021 to 2022 boom, particularly in suburbs like Cape Coral, Northport, and Winter Haven, has led to a catastrophic supply glut. Builders base their models on perpetual, limitless demand which has now vanished. This has created rows of empty, unabsorbed new inventory, The presence of this excess supply forces an immediate, structural correction. Builders must slash prices, often with $20,000 plus incentives, which sets the new, lower floor for the entire resale market. This supply trap ensures that prices will continue to fall until the market absorbs the excess stock, a process that could take years. C. The investor sell-off and negative equity spiral. The high penetration of investor-owned properties, short-term rentals. Flippers amplified the boom and is now amplifying the bust, as investor profits are squeezed by soft rental rates and crippling insurance costs. They are the first to initiate a panic sell-off, flooding the market with discounted listings over 25% of supply in Cape Coral. This leads directly to the negative equity crisis in markets like Port Charlotte, where homeowners who bought at peak are now underwater. This combination, investors liquidating, owners defaulting, creates a self-feeding spiral of inventory and price collapse. D. The collapse of effective demand. The final breakdown is the collapse of effective demand. High mortgage rates, 7.5%, combined with stricter lending standards and mandatory high insurance costs, mean that even if a home is priced 20% lower, few local buyers can actually qualify to purchase it. This is evidenced by the massive failure rate of pending sales, 30% in Northport, 28% in Tampa. The demand is gone, the market is stagnant, and the inventory piles up, confirming that Florida's housing dream has become a widespread financial ghost town nightmare. The chickens have come home to roost in Florida. The financial reckoning, once a distant rumble on the horizon, is now a Category 5 hurricane slamming directly into the Sunshine State's fragile economy. It's not just a downturn, it's a fundamental restructuring, a painful but necessary recalibration, a confluence of catastrophic forces. Climate change-fueled insurance premiums skyrocketing beyond the reach of ordinary homeowners, crippling interest rates born from a swamp of debt, and a glut of luxury condos and sprawling developments erected with reckless abandon, has created a perfect storm demanding a severe and unavoidable market correction. Forget the whispers and the hopeful predictions. The debate is over. The question is no longer if prices will plummet, sending shivers down the spines of developers and investors alike, but how profoundly these prices will crater and for how long this brutal price war, a battle royale for survival, will rage across the peninsula. The widespread price erosion, the sickening slide of values that's turning dreams into dust, and the overwhelming surge in available properties. Entire ghost neighborhoods sitting vacant and silent across these 10 beleaguered cities. These aren't mere statistical blips, unfortunate economic tides that will soon recede. They represent strategic opportunities of immense, almost unimaginable potential, glittering prizes waiting to be seized by the astute, the bold, and the strategically prepared. Consider the numbers: a staggering 15% freefall in Northport and Cape Coral, once gilded emblems of Floridian prosperity, now symbols of overreach and unsustainable growth. Witness the near-total annihilation of affordability in previously accessible havens, like Winter Haven, where the promise of a comfortable life for working families has been cruelly snatched away. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they're shattered hopes and desperate pleas. This is a market now defined by panicked sellers, individuals and families facing foreclosure, developers teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, their towers half-finished monuments to hubris, burdened by unsold inventory they can no longer afford to maintain. It's a market where a relentless downward pressure on prices is the only certainty. The time for cautious observation, for hesitant analysis fueled by fear and uncertainty, is definitively, irrevocably over. The balance of power has irrevocably swung. The scales have tipped. It now resides firmly, decisively, in the hands of the discerning buyer, the savvy investor who understands the cyclical nature of markets and possesses the courage to act. When others are paralyzed by fear, the market stands poised, almost expectant, like a stage set for a dramatic performance, awaiting the arrival of disciplined, well-capitalized individuals and entities. The white knights ready to ride in and acquire prime real estate, beachfront villas, downtown condos, sprawling estates at unprecedented, deeply discounted prices that would have been unthinkable just months ago. These are deals unburdened by the frenzied bidding wars, the ego-driven escalations, and the artificially inflated peak pricing of the recent past, a period of irrational exuberance now viewed with regret and disbelief. Therefore, meticulously study the markets exhibiting the most dramatic inventory spikes, the areas where the price cuts are the deepest, the most sustained, and the most indicative of long-term distress. Pore over the data, analyze the trends, and identify the opportunities that others are too afraid to see. The Florida correction. While undoubtedly causing hardship and pain for many, the families losing their homes, the contractors facing ruin, is, in essence, your golden opportunity to reclaim lost value, to rebuild your portfolio, and to secure a future of financial independence. Embrace the discount. Capitalize on the present moment, this fleeting window of opportunity, and most importantly, own a significant piece of the future, a tangible asset that will appreciate in value for generations to come. Secure your stake in the Sunshine State. Plant your flag in the sand. While others are running for the shadows, blinded by fear and regret, don't just watch history unfold, be a part of it.